Key themes. The core theme of Finding Frankenstein is the exploration of the human desire for creation, its responsibilities, and the relationship between man and creation. With the addition of modern fantasy elements, it deals with exploration beyond the boundaries of creation and the consequent destructive consequences. The protagonist is obsessed with the desire to create new life at the boundary between science and magic, and he suffers the resulting ethical and moral dilemma. Key characters. 1. Victor Frankenstein II *, a descendant of Victor Frankenstein, a scientist who wants to take over the work of his ancestors and create new creations with modern technology. A person full of curiosity and ambition, but unable to fulfill his responsibilities as a result. 2. Creature. Monster. A creature created by Victor, similar to a human being but with supernatural abilities, constantly contemplating about his reason for being and his humanity. He develops complex relationships with his creator. 3. Helen *, Victor's friend and research colleague, who helps Victor with his plans but serves as his moral compass. She constantly warns Victor of the dangers of creation. 4. Joseph *, Victor's rival scientist, ambitious to steal Victor's research and gain commercial advantage, seeks to achieve his success through Victor's failure. Plot organization. 1. Start * Victor Frankenstein II discovers ancestral research records and builds on them with plans to combine modern technology with magic to create new life forms. 2. Creation * Victor completes the creation with Helen's help, but the creature, contrary to expectations, turns into an unpredictable being. 3. Conflict * Kritzer develops a sense of identity confusion and isolation over his existence, and a sense of revenge for human society. Victor and Helen try to control him but fail. 4. Confrontation * Joseph tries to take advantage of Victor's failure to take advantage of his own, while Kritzer challenges Victor to find a reason for his existence. 5. Conclusion * Victor feels responsibility for his creation, preparing for his final showdown with Creature. In the process, Victor faces his limitations and humanity once again. Theme and message. The novel contains warnings about human desire for creation and its consequences. Through the complex relationship between the creator and the creature, it emphasizes the creator's responsibilities and moral obligations. It also explores the potential dangers and consequent anguish that humans may bring to cross the boundaries of nature. Ending ideas. In the final confrontation, Victor realizes his mistake and attempts to reconcile with Kritzer. However, Kritzer's distrust of human society is already deep, and he eventually decides to end his existence. Victor respects Kritzer's choices and realizes the lessons he has to learn from his death. Victor decides to become a better human being through his experiences, and he pledges not to repeat his ancestors' mistakes. This ending leaves a deep lingering impression on the reader through human limitations and the resulting reflection. Chapter 1. The beginning of creation. On a calm evening, Victor Frankenstein II found an ancestor's research record in the study of his old mansion. The record was filled with old and faded paper, but inside it, the breaths of the past were still alive and breathing. Victor was deeply immersed with the record in his hands. His ancestor, Victor Frankenstein, was a man who had sought to cross the boundaries of mankind in the past. His research had been taboo for a long time, but to Victor II, it seemed to be the key to unlocking new possibilities. Victor began making plans to create new life forms by combining modern technology and magic. He wanted to push the limits of humans further, experimenting with new possibilities at the boundary between science and magic. His intention started from a simple curiosity, but gradually it turned into an ambition. Victor risked everything for a moment of creation. Helen was deeply involved in his plans. As a friend and fellow of Victor's, she served as his moral compass, constantly alerting Victor to the ethical and moral problems he was missing. Victor, is what we do the right thing to do? You never know what consequences of breaking the laws of nature, Helen warned. However, Victor's mind was already following in the footsteps of his ancestors. He was all set up to make his own creation. In the center of the lab, complex machinery was buzzing with low tones. Victor carefully assembled the last part of the creation with his own hands. He eagerly waited for the moment, hoping for life at his fingertips. After a while, the machine stopped and the creation opened its eyes. It was a human-like form, but there was a supernatural force in its pupils. Victor recognized that his creation was complete, but at that moment he began to feel deeply skeptical about his actions. Contrary to his expectations, the life he created was turning into an unpredictable being. Victor gradually became aware of the responsibility for his creation. He became concerned with what he had created and how it would affect the world. Helen's warning rang out in his mind, and he realized that it could become a reality. Now Victor had to face his creation. It was not just a creature born out of a combination of science and magic, but also the result of his desires and ambitions. Through his relationship with Kritzer, he had to explore what kind of human beings he really was and what his desire for creation had resulted in. This first chapter marks the beginning of Victor Frankenstein II's journey, emphasizing the desire for creation and the resulting weight of responsibility. He will now begin a deep exploration of complex relationships with creatures and human nature. Numerous challenges and conflicts await him, and in the process, he will realize the meaning of true humanity and moral responsibility. This story contains warnings and reflections on the consequences that human desire for creation can bring. Chapter 2: Creation. Victor Frankenstein II carefully analyzes his ancestors' research records and is obsessed with his ambition to create the perfect creature he imagines by combining modern science and magic. His laboratory was full of cutting-edge technology, and notes written in the handwriting of his ancestors Victor Frankenstein were neatly placed on the walls. The notes were vast amounts of data to unlock the secrets of the creation of life, and Victor wanted to develop his own unique method based on them. With the help of Helen, Victor conducts the experiment. Helen helps Victor with his work based on scientific knowledge, while also giving advice so that his research does not flow in dangerous directions. She constantly reminded Victor that the creation of life is not just a technical achievement. It is accompanied by responsibility for the creation. Victor listens to her, but he was somewhat swayed by his ambition. As the experiment progressed, Victor felt the boundary between reality and imagination gradually blur. The combination of modern technology and magic brought about unexpected results, and the life he created resembled human figures, but the vitality that flowed in them was inhumane. When Kritzer opened his eyes for the first time, there was an incomprehensible deep emotion in his eyes. At that moment, Victor realized that he was not just an inventor but a creator. Victor and Helen tried to communicate with Kritzer. However, Kritzer had emotion and anguish that could not be expressed in words. He began to ask why he existed, and struggled to find a place in human society. Victor tried to explain the concept of humanity to him, but Kritzer found it difficult to understand the contradictory nature of humans. In the process, Helen warned Victor, "The responsibility for what we created is much heavier and more complicated than we think. Kritzer is not just an experimental output. He should be acknowledged as being like us." Her words left a deep impression on Victor, but he still did not want to lose control of his creation. Victor tried to understand Kritzer. but tried to find a way to control him. However, Kritzer increasingly wanted to find his own identity, which led to distrust and rebellion in human society. In a conversation with Victor, he asked the question, "Who am I? Why did you make me?" These questions made Victor feel his limitations as a scientist and made him rethink the meaning of his creative desires that he has ever had. Eventually, Victor realizes that he cannot avoid responsibility for the consequences of his research. He and Helen understands Kritzer and decides to try to find a way to communicate with him. In this process, Victor faces responsibility for his creation and the resulting ethical dilemma, and recognizes how difficult the path he has chosen is. Chapter 2 deals with the moment when Victor's desire for creation is revealed as a reality and sheds light on his internal changes that conflict at the boundary between science and ethics. This allows readers to think deeply about the complex consequences and responsibilities that human desire for creation can bring. Chapter 3. Beginning of isolation. From the moment he woke up, Kritzer, a creature created by Victor Frankenstein II, realized that he was distant from human society. He was conscious of his existence for the first time by looking at himself in the mirror. The reflection was similar to that of a human, but there was a bizarre corner to the human eye. Through that figure, Kritzer realized that he did not belong to this world. Victor felt fearful and proud of his creation at the same time. His intention was simply to transcend his ancestors. However, Kritzer's existence raised more complex issues than that. Kritzer developed his intelligence in ways that Victor unexpectedly did, which presented him with a new and dangerous challenge. Helen was constantly warning her by Victor's side. She recognized that Kritzer was not just a test subject but a creature with emotion. "Victor, what we created is not just a physical being. He has emotion, and he has the right as a being like us," Helen told Victor. But Victor ignored these warnings and only focused on his own research. Kritzer was full of curiosity about human society, but everyone he came into contact with was horrified at his appearance. This reaction gave him a deep sense of isolation, and he began to feel increasingly alienated from human society. He hid himself in the woods, observed human lives from a distance, and began to learn their language and behavior. He tried to understand human emotions and social relationships, but the solitude he felt only grew. Meanwhile, Joseph was planning to steal Victor's research and make it commercially profitable. He was looking for a way to sneak into Victor's laboratory, copy the research records, and let the world know about Kritzer's existence. Joseph attempted to use Kritzer to achieve his goal, thereby fatally hitting Victor. Without knowing Joseph's existence, Victor tried various methods to control Kritzer. He tried to talk to Kritzer, but the gap between the two beings could not be easily filled. Kritzer asked Victor why he existed, and Victor was unable to give him a clear answer. "You are my creation, but I am also not perfect as your creator," Victor said. Kritzer was disappointed with these answers, and he lost trust in Victor. Kritzer decided to go on his own path to find the meaning of existence. He wanted to understand human life deeper, and he set out on a journey to find his identity. In this process, he constantly wondered about human nature and his essence. This chapter explores the inner conflict of Kritzer, who experiences isolation and alienation, and the weight of Victor's moral responsibility. Kritzer's solitude reveals the gap between reality and the intention of Victor, who created him, as well as the reason why he does not belong to human society. This presents a deep reflection on the ethical dilemma that humans face when trying to cross the boundaries of creation and the resulting responsibility. Chapter 4. Beginning of conflict. Victor Frankenstein II finally succeeded in creating Kritzer through his studies and experiments so far. However, Contrary to his expectations, Kritzer is similar to humans in appearance. But his inner world was filled with a more complex and mysterious whirlpool of emotions. After waking up in Victor's lab, Kritzer quietly observed the world surrounding him at first, but soon realized that he was a stranger to humans. The identity confusion about Kritzer's existence deepened over time. He learned human languages, read books, and expanded his understanding of the world through conversations between Victor and Helen. But finding a reason for his existence was still a difficult task. Victor tried to teach Kritzer the meaning of humanity and life, but Kritzer gradually realized that he could not be integrated into human society because of his appearance and ability. Victor made various attempts to adapt Kritzer to human society with Helen. But the process was not smooth. Kritzer became a subject of distrust and fear among humans, further deepening his sense of isolation. Helen warned Victor, "We created him, but if we can't help him to belong somewhere, we didn't really create him." Her words shocked Victor, and he became reminded of the responsibility for his creation once again. In this situation, Joseph was convinced that Victor's experiment had failed and sought a way to make a commercial use of Kritzer. Joseph was planning to sneak Victor's research and create his own creation. And he tried to induce Kritzer to turn his back on Victor. Joseph approached Kritzer and encouraged him, saying, "You are only Victor's experiment. Your true potential has not yet been expressed." Kritzer began to be shaken by Joseph's words, and the situation surrounding him and his distrust of people grew. He asked Victor why he existed, and Victor agonized to find an answer. Victor eventually told Kritzer, "You are my creation, but you must be more than yourself." These words comforted Kritzer to some extent, but they did not completely quell the simmering conflict within him. Kritzer's confusion and isolation made him increasingly confrontational with human society, and he was obsessed with doing something to prove his existence. Victor and Helen tried to control him, but Kritzer was already out of their hands. He decided to venture out to find his identity, and to redefine his relationship with Victor, who created him. In this process, Kritzer developed a sense of revenge for Victor and human society, which soon led to a conflict with Victor. Victor realized that Kritzer was starting to get out of his control and sought a way with Helen to stop him. The conflict escalated, and Kritzer challenged Victor to find his reason for existence. All of these conflicts and confrontations required Victor to deeply reflect on his creative desires and responsibilities. As he prepared for his final confrontation with Kritzer, he faced his limitations and humanity once again. The relationship with Kritzer has transformed beyond the simple relationship between the creator and the creature, into a place of deep exploration of humans' attempts to cross the boundaries of nature and the consequences. Chapter 5: Agony and Conflict. Victor Frankenstein II was sitting in the dark corner of the lab. His mind was in a mess. He thought about how the creatures he created were unable to adapt to human society and felt isolated. The creature had human form, but his abilities transcended humans and reached a level beyond even Victor's control. Victor's ancestors, the original Frankenstein's records, clearly revealed the mistakes of his past neglect of responsibility for his creation. These records sent Victor a warning message. But he was also on the same path as his ancestors. He did not understand how his creations interact with society, and as a result, Kritzer was rejected by humans. Helen tried to console him by Victor's side, but Victor was deeply dormant in his own failures. "Victor, we have to understand your creation and find ways to help. If you dismiss him as just a monster, we're no different," Helen said quietly. She wanted Victor to recognize Kritzer as a being, not just a product of experiments. Meanwhile, Joseph was putting into action a plan to turn Victor's failure into his own success. He was pursuing Victor's research and looking for a way to commercially utilize Kritzer's abilities. Joseph was busy pursuing his own interests, laughing at Victor and Helen's efforts. Through his conversation with Victor, Kritzer further developed confusion about his existence and distrust of human society. He couldn't understand why humans reject him, and he despaired that even his creator didn't fully understand him. This confusion of identity further isolated him and turned into a vengeance on human society. Victor realized how indifferent he was to Kritzer. He was engrossed in his research and overlooked the identity crisis that Kritzer was experiencing. This realization further plunged Victor into agony, and he decided to improve his relationship with Kritzer to correct his mistakes. Victor's internal conflict was an important theme that can be found in Mary Shelley's original work. Through Frankenstein, Shelley explored what responsibility the creator should take for his creation. Victor Frankenstein II is also reinterpreting the theme of the original novel in that he must try not to repeat his ancestors' mistakes. Eventually, Victor acknowledges his limitations and approaches Kritzer to fulfill his moral obligations as a human being. He understands him through conversations with Kritzer and tries to find out what he really wants. In this process, Victor regains his humanity and forms a true relationship between the creator and the creature. Conclusion. This chapter sheds light on the human desire for creation and the resulting weight of responsibility. Victor realizes human moral obligations through his mistakes, and he also grows through the restoration of his relationship with Kritzer. This awakens the importance of humanity and responsibility by allowing the reader to think about the ethical dilemmas that attempts to cross the boundaries of creation can bring.